Hello viewers, much has been made about this week's Daily Race C. We made a very disparaging video earlier in the week about the Igor Nordvan race. However, it's this week's Daily Race B, which I think is the one to do. Suzuka, Group 3 cars. This is what Gran Turismo is all about. I did two of these races in my previous video. Both were amazing races, but I was starting a bit too far back. So first up, let's improve our qualifying time. The current record being a 1:59.272, which was good enough for the top 1,000 in the world. But if I wanted to have any ambition of starting, let's say in the top 5 or 6 on the grid, I would need to get that into the 58s. And I knew that I could if I hooked up the perfect lap. So let's take a look at my first lap here of the time trial session. I am using the BMW M6. It's definitely one of the better cars for this race. Perhaps not the best, but it's good enough here for a 59.1 on my first lap. You see, I was mildly amused with that. But I knew, as I said, that I could go quicker and dip into the 58s should I get a perfect lap. Well, I definitely wouldn't be getting a 58 by driving like that. I think it's quite fair to say that the new physics in Gran Turismo are a bit hit and miss, but I do like the challenge of trying to improve and get used to them. And I think this session here was really about that. Just trying to adjust and change my driving style to suit the new physics, which require a bit more of a finer touch, I would say, on the brake pedal at least. On this lap, you can see I was nearly level with the Ghost, meaning about quarter of a second up on the previous best. So this could be a 58 if I bring this one home, given that I start my Ghost 3/10 ahead, and therefore catching up with it, well, you're 3/10 up. Through the hairpin, this car is a little bit clumsy through there. It is a big car, and it struggles to turn. And now we're ahead of the Ghost, so this could be well into the 58s if we can bring this one home. Through Spoon, this is not an easy corner to get right. It's probably one of the hardest corners on the track, I would say, especially this exit. You have to really get on the power as early as possible without running wide onto the AstroTurf. To give yourself the best exit onto this long straight, 130R, it's all about bravery and timing, carrying as much speed as possible. I lose a little bit of speed there and therefore time on the exit into the final chicane. Carrying the speed in quite nicely over the second apex in second gear, and then obviously driving to the right hand side, which saves you about half a tenth to the line. It's a 58.79, which I was very happy with, considering that it was only my third or fourth lap of this time trial session. So I knew the potential was there. I knew I could go quicker. Obviously not like that, but if I had just hooked up a completely perfect lap, I could definitely chip away a couple of tenths, or at least a bit of a tenth. There was definitely some mistakes along the way, that's fair to say. This attempt was a little bit better, going through 130R, gaining a bit of that speed back which we lost on the fastest lap, carrying the speed in nicely to the chicane, driving a little bit wider than I'd like with the second part. As we run up to the line, definitely closer to the Ghost than I was at the start of the lap, and so it's just a marginal gain, so a 0.768. However, there was some more improvement yet to come. Let's take a look at my fastest lap. As we're going through turn 1 and 2, it's really about actually carrying the speed and getting quite narrow. It's really tempting to try to open up turn 2 a lot, but you just have to kind of carry the speed in and turn in early. And that's something I was thinking in this new set of physics, especially in Group 3. I think you do have to turn in perhaps a little bit earlier than you think and get the car to really start turning. It's almost like the car turns exponentially, and you have to kind of wait for it really to find the grip. So you turn in perhaps a little bit earlier than you think, carry as much speed, and come off the brake a bit earlier. And I was finding that technique seemed to work. If you carry the speed in too much with the brake pedal held, then often you just understeer wide. So coming out of the hairpin this time in first gear, and I think that was better. You can see I'm a little bit closer to the Ghost. Maybe not, it's hard to say. First and second is quite marginal. Through Spoon, trying to get that exit, of course. Up into third gear to give a bit of extra stability on the exit. And it wasn't as good of a run. As you can see, the Ghost pulling away slightly. And so this is going to be a miraculous ending to the lap to improve the lap, I would say. Very late on the brakes, you see, very committed, carrying the speed in really nicely. Timing of the release of the brake pedal was perfect. and then coming up to the line, I am going to miss a shift, but it is going to be an improvement. Why did I miss a shift? That was so stupid. That's good enough for 384 in the world. So this is actually a very competitive daily race this week. There's no question about that. But that's enough qualifying. Let's jump into a race. And in this first race, I was about to commit a very severe mistake or error. I say about to, I've already done it. Can you spot it? It's on the screen. As we head through turn 1, there is a distinct lack of grip. And I think, what on earth is going on here? Before I clearly realise what I've done, and if we take a look at the bottom left of the screen, I've still got the wet tyres installed. I'm on the freaking wet tyres, aren't I? I wonder why there was no grip. Let's change these back permanently to the mediums. Okay, definitely mediums this time. Definitely mediums. Okay, let's try this again with some actual slick tyres this time. Third on the grid, let's see what we can do. So starting towards the front of the pack, in the previous video started 10th and 11th, and it's very hard to fight for a win or a podium from that sort of position. But obviously from third, you have every chance. A couple of these guys are very quick. This turned out to be a very exciting race. Started towards the front, and it's always good to have some actual grip by installing the correct tyres. For reference, if you change your tyres in the garage, it will change it for every session you go into. And therefore, if you leave the car on wets, then it will always be on wets every time you use that car. So go back to the garage, change it to something different, change it to some slicks, and then you should be in a better position. I always seem to forget that in this car, but the main thing here is that on this first lap, well, Wet Max, the leader, is about to get a penalty. But I was just noticing that the top two were slightly quicker. They were just pulling away slightly. Till this moment, the Italian in the second, looking up the inside into Spoon. Doesn't quite come off, but it does help me as I pull right onto the back of the pair of them. And the main thing I would say is that the penalty line is about to come up, and therefore we need to get this overtake done. And we are going to, courtesy of that, as we carry the momentum past him. Up into second. It's about to get even more exciting here. Through 130R, carrying the speed. Done nicely. Up against the GTR, he's going to make a big mistake here. Just dropping two wheels onto the grass. And we're going to take the lead, albeit momentarily here, coming out of the chicane. I try to cover him off here. He gets a really good exit. And I can't quite turn to the right early enough. And he's going to get the inside line and a bump draft from the car behind. And that's going to give him the inside line and the position. Not much I can do here. Just hang it around the outside. Be really careful to not outbrake yourself and go onto the AstroTurf. So easy to do through turn 1 and 2. So back to second. It is a net gain overall from the race start, where we started third. I ideally would have liked to have stayed in the lead there. Only lasted a couple of seconds. But this race definitely is the one to do, I think, this week. Daily Race A, the rally race, also quite interesting. I would say that rallying feels quite good on the new set of physics. But the Daily Race C, I'm not a fan of it. It does have some redeeming factors. It is still quite fun in some respects, but they could have definitely made it a lot easier, and it just kind of reflects the, I would say, lack of overall care of the daily races. And speaking of lack of care, drifting a little bit wide there on the exit of 130R. Fortunately, the two cars behind go side by side through the chicane, start fighting, so I'm kind of spared a little bit there. The gap opens back up again to a safe 9/10 of a second, and so I'm not within range of being overtaken. I managed to set a 59.8 here, the first time doing it sub 2 minutes in the race. So very happy with that. The two cars behind turning their attention on each other, and so I was kind of clear here to try to finish in a nice second place, nearly losing control there on turn 1 and 2, but ultimately bringing it home for a safe and a rather good second place. There we go, P2. That was a good race, good result. Just shows you if you start towards the front, it does help quite a lot. Okay, we're going to log on to my second account and see if we can go from the back. So it's over to Mr. Alex Albon. And for this one, I'm going to jump into a different car, the Porsche 911. Okay, starting 16 from the grid, right at the back. This should be quite fun. Let's see. It is going to be fun, I can assure you of that. Heading through turn 1 and 2, right at the back of the pack. Bit of a concertina effect there, the BMW into the back of the Porsche in front, getting slowed down, gaining 1 position. So this is the almighty scramble from the back of the pack. How many positions can we find? There's a yellow flag already. Car rejoining. Car off the track as well. Trying to hang a line around the outside here, which gives us the inside for the left of Dunlop. Bit of contact, but I think it was fine. We were side by side. And that's 12th place already. Up behind Toto Wolff, giving Gran Turismo 7 a bit of a go in his downtime on the Italian account, of all things. The car in 10th there, just running a little bit wide on the exit of Degner 1. Not enough to slow him down, but on Degner 2, that was definitely enough to slow him down. Gaining a position there. Into the hairpin, looking for the move. Bit of contact from behind. It's a bit awkward, but we all get through unscathed, albeit with a bit of contact. Big gap opening up in front of 10th place now, so we're going to try and find our way through as quickly as possible. Not really any space here to do it, and so we're going to look for the opening on the exit. It's going to be a drag race here, and it's not a nice position to be in this when you're kind of halfway alongside on the inside. Fortunately, we get through. He does run a little bit wide on the exit, but here we're going to get pushed a little bit here onto the Astro. Then there's some contact on the second part of the apex, and so Toto Wolff comes flying back through and back to 11th. At the other end of the straight, heading into turn 1, Toto goes defensive, looking for the switch back into turn 1, doesn't quite work, and then Toto turns it into a drift session. I get a push from behind, which actually quite helps, as I get the speed boost to jump up into 10th place. The next challenger didn't really put up too much resistance, just driving a little bit too wide through Dunlop. We get the exit speeds and an easy position gain there. It wasn't until the end of lap 4, and it's quite good this race, being a 5-lap race. We're looking at a 10-minute total race time, which is a good length, and again, longer than Daily Race C this week, which only lasts about 8 minutes. So it is a little bit too short, I would say. But yeah, this race being 10 minutes gives you some time to catch up if the gaps open up early on, which they did in this one. Up the inside, we find ourselves now up into 8th. Up behind a guy with a very suitable name for this last lap that's about to come up, as he's called, well, Please Don't Crash Me. And so I'm going to try to oblige with that. It's a fair request as we cross the line to begin the final lap. He's going to go very defensive, which is very much his right to do so. And so heading down towards turn 1, trying to force him narrow, again trying to get that cut back, doesn't quite work, and trying to force him into some sort of mistake, doesn't really make the mistake I was looking for. Through the end of the S's, coming towards Dunlop, I was looking for a move here. You can carry the speed and look up the inside. Didn't quite work. I kind of half backed out there, worried that I was going to kind of run a little bit too wide and, well, crash into him, which was directly violating his order to not crash him. Anyway, up in towards the hairpin, looking to get an overlap, bit of contact. We're going to go quite deep. Can we get the old switcheroo? You see on the map there, on the radar, the Frenchman behind trying to get in on the act, not quite able to make it work. So still in 8th, trying to get P7, which would not be such a bad result given we started 16th on the grid. Coming up into Spoon, a Lamborghini is going to meet his fate here, sliding backwards across the circuit. And so this battle has already turned into the fight for 6th place. Now with a decent exit, can we get the run here? I'm going to look to the right. I'm going to try and open up the inside. It doesn't quite allow that to happen. And so we're going to move back to the right-hand side. We're both going to take the normal racing line. It's going to have to be a move into the final corner. But it's going to be the move that you probably didn't expect. On the outside, the space opens up. I'm going to drive into it. There is some contact. And we're going to go through. Now, you see by my response, I was a little bit unsure as to whether or not that was fair or not. But we shall see in just a moment. P6. Was it a fair move? Was it a fair move? That's the question. It was a good race, though. It was a very fun race. Okay, let's have another look at that then. Coming into the hairpin. He went quite narrow. The space was there to go into. He was actually defending really well for this race, for this last lap. Went around the outside. Yeah, it doesn't look good on me, I think. Near enough where the contact happens there. He is ahead. I'm mostly alongside. I'm not really turning to the right. I'm kind of level with the track. It's one of those that could go either way. Probably just a racing incident, but let me know your thoughts. And for the final challenge, we jump over to the Americas, the infamous Scott Speed. And in this race, I'm going to jump back into the Lamborghini Huracan, which is actually, again, one of the quicker cars. I mean, I've driven the BMW, the Porsche, and now the Huracan. All seem to be quite good cars. And actually, one of the strengths of this race, I would say, is that the BOP seems to be quite good. There's lots of different cars, I think, that are absolutely usable in this race. It's not really just a race of one car. The Nissan GTR, the car in front, is also a very usable option. So we have at least 4 cars that are like decent and worth using, which is good to see. And it's the reason why I'm enjoying this Daily Race B this week, as we head up the inside of a couple of cars there, just anticipating the movement across the track. A car there into the tyre wall, meeting barrier at a perpendicular angle. Love to see it. This guy turning right on the exit of a right-hander. And what's going to happen here? This is spoon corner. Bit of contact between the cars in front. This is how I'm going to gain the next position, just with the casual bump draft, as we're going to move through and move up into the top 10. So that's how I got that position. Now coming up into 130R, again on the inside, not really a comfortable place to be. You really do have to check up a little bit mid-corner. The Brazilian's going to continue turning left onto the straight, and that's going to be 9th place. So quite a lot of people just forgetting to stop turning on the exit of corners. Allow me to introduce you to Exhibit A. This is where this race is going to unravel almightily. Coming into the hairpin here, the chicane, sorry, it's going to kind of turn across a little bit in the braking zone. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I suppose you could say. But we're going to allow that and just continue and try to overtake this guy. Now, it's going to be a little bit dirty here. We're going to cut across the inside, so he's going to move multiple times under braking, or sorry, on the straight, which kind of frowned upon. But anyway, we're going to duck underneath, and you guessed it, guys, he's just going to kind of bundle us wide unceremoniously. Thanks for that, mate. Yep, good one. Thank you very much. Great sportsmanship. Look at that. His sportsmanship rating went up. And actually, mine went down. You love to see it. Okay, I have got just over 5 minutes to set a lap time. Let's see what we can do. First lap, I managed a 59.2, which is pretty good. Second lap, a 59.0. 59.0 in 2 laps. That'll do. And we're going to jump back in. That has put us 3rd on the grid. Now, we complained, obviously, about the lack of sportsmanship in that previous race, or the lack of cleanliness. Well, it wasn't the other guy we need to worry about this time around. In fact, I would be the main component here, as we go for a, well, I mean, how would you describe that? It was utterly filthy. And now we can only look as our main rival from the previous race is about to ghost through us at 100 miles an hour. So yeah, that was a bit humiliating, a very stupid move. It was never going to work. That was completely my fault. At least I know whose fault it was, I guess. Anyway, later on in the race, unsurprisingly, we find our Brazilian friend in the wall, having smashed someone else off. And he's going to try and do the same to me, not having any of it. We're going to introduce him to the Shadow Realm before finishing a disappointing 13th position. Tim, I am very sorry. That was completely my fault. Well, we can try and redeem ourselves here in the final race, up against Tim once again. We had some really good races here, and as I said at the beginning, Daily Race B this week, Suzuka Group 3 cars, which seems to be quite a balanced class, at least for this track. This was a fun race, and I was really enjoying it, despite all of the argy-bargy, could we say, in the past couple of races. Some of it caused by myself, albeit just trying to race hard, just making the mistake. And now we can try and correct that and have a good, proper race here. The guy in the lead was incredibly fast. He was well into the 59s pretty much every lap, and that's kind of pace I don't really have access to. I mean, I have done a 59.8 in the race, which is not too bad, but starting 3rd is not as easy. Of course, you have some cars to try to overtake, and Tim a little bit wide there through Spoon, not really able to capitalise here. We're going to try and get a better exit onto the back straight. And obviously this is where the incident happened on the previous race. We're going to try to not repeat that. That would be ideal. So I'm not going to really go for the overtake here. We're going to give the bump draft instead. There's a car behind as well, also giving me a bump draft. So we're going to play it nice and sensible for the time being. Let's not really rush any moves. The 130R move is always on, but you do have to be incredibly careful with it, as it really is a precarious place to overtake. That was a poor run through the chicane, it must be said. Fortunately enough, the car behind, as you can see, wanting to bump draft, he could have easily have gone for that overtake, as he got a much better run on the exit, but wanting to work together. Not the best run through turn 2, as we get all manner of oversteer. Really easy to do through there. This car, I've said it many times, it rotates very well, and that's great if you can handle it and harness that power. However, sometimes it might just catch you out a little bit if you release the brake pedal in the wrong fashion. Coming up to the chicane, you can see the massive difference between the two cars. The Huracan rotates beautifully through here. The BMW, as we saw earlier, feels very clumsy, feels more like the Titanic trying to avoid an iceberg. And unfortunately, we all know how that one ends. Anyway, coming up towards Spoon Curve, going towards the inside does Tim. Looking for the switch back. Again, not the best move here. We're going to just throw up the inside. He does give the space, so really good racing here. As we get a bit of a poor exit, and I'm looking at the moment here where we're looking up the inside into 130R. I'm not going to make that same mistake. I'm just going to leave myself in the mirror, just to give Tim something to think about. But he knows that surely I'm going to have to pull back to the racing line, as I do. We're through here, right on the edge of the track limits, in towards the chicane. End of lap 3, carrying the speed in quite nicely. We're going to try and get the exit here to get a good run onto the straight. I think the BMW has really good mid-speed. Therefore, even with a good exit, you see the BMW doesn't really get caught. However, now that the slipstream really comes into effect, we have a very good chance. It doesn't go defensive. I was quite surprised, if I'm being completely honest. Don't get a full overlap, but the space is given. We both awkwardly slide. There is a tiny bit of contact, but I think the move was mostly done by that point. And so we're going to move up into P2. So the overtake is finally done very cleanly after, well, 3 laps. And I suppose you could say, including the 5 laps in the previous race, let's say 8 laps it took me to overtake Tim properly. So up into P2, the leader's long gone. It's very much a case now of just trying to pull away. And I noticed this car was a lot better through the Degner corners. And then, of course, as we've mentioned, better through this hairpin as well. The BMW just really struggling through here. Probably its worst bit of the track. So the gap opened up quite quickly to 8 tenths. I was quite comfortable coming up in the end to finish in a very good 2nd place. Nice clean race there. The guy in the lead was way too quick, but I'll take a P2. So Daily Race B, easily the best race this week. How about next week though? For Daily Race A, we've got Road Atlanta. Daily Race B, we've got Blue Moon, which has not come up in a blue moon. It's been ages. And then for Daily Race C, the Nürburgring Endurance Circuit, presumably with some weather and some strategy, hopefully. So it's looking like quite a good week next week. As ever, guys, subscribe if you're new to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.